calling this meeting to order. So Clerk Kalish, you probably already know this, but we've got Supervisor Severson, Supervisor Seep, and myself, so we do have a quorum. Agenda item number 3 is agenda approval. So we have a 12-point agenda, so it's going to be between the two of you guys every time. I'm looking for a motion to approve this agenda.
Terry Severson will move.
Second.
Okay, motion by Severson, second by Seep. So obviously we're all in favor of the agenda, so the agenda is approved. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes from Clerk Kalish.
Severson will approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Severson, second by Seep. So we're all in favor of those meeting minutes being approved. So that motion carries. Agenda item number 5, Independent Retailer Month. So there's a draft resolution in the cover sheet that I drafted up. This is another attempt to just give deference and celebrate and recognize different groups in our county. So I just Googled what this month was, and Independent Retailer Month is one of them. I did reach out to the Richland area chamber. I talked to Craig Woodhouse, who's the president of the chamber, and this resolution would go to them. I know that they've done quite a few shop local campaigns. They've had some good stuff going on in the past. I'm just in the process of learning what they're up to now. I do think we might there might be some interest in having Mr. Woodhouse come to one of our finance committee meetings to talk about what the chamber is up to, because I believe the county is a member of the chamber. But anyway, do you guys have any comments or questions about this?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thank you for setting this agenda item up. I think it's very good, and I think it's a great gesture on your part and on the part of the county to continue this recognition process. Not only that, it's good relations with the community.
Okay. Mr. Severson, you got any thoughts on this one?
No.
Okay. So then I'm looking for a motion and a second to present a resolution to the county board celebrating Independent Retailer Month.
So move.
Okay, motion by Seep. Are you okay with this one, Mr. Severson?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to second it?
You can second too.
Okay, I'll second it then.
A roll call vote.
Okay, so.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you really wanted to know his thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. That takes us to agenda item number 6, board rule changes from the Administrator Committee. So I'm going to do my best to walk through these rules that came from that Administrator Transition Committee. I've got the document open, and I see that Mr. Langreck's opening it up for us too. Mr. Seep, if you got any questions about any of these as we're going through them, just let me know.
Thank you very kindly.
Most of the rule changes, or at least the start of the rule changes, the majority ones are in Rule 14, and this has to do with purchasing and contracts. So what the committee is recommending to our committee is that contracts be approved by the county board when they are $10,000 or more in a year, rather than $5,000, or rather over $5,000 in a year. So they want to double it from $5,000 to $10,000. They want to also, in Rule 14, insert the county administrator as approving contracts less than $10,000. if I'm understanding it correct. And Mr. Langreck, if I get any of this wrong, just jump in, or if anyone else knows if I'm getting this wrong, please feel free to jump in. Department heads, there's a new sentence in this rule that says department heads will report all contracts to the appropriate committee. So that's even if they're less than $10,000, they will still be going to the committee, not for their approval if they're less than 10,000, but just for their information. It looks like the next section just has to do with expenditures. I'm not quite sure exactly the difference here. It looks like maybe they're doubling it, or Mr. Langreck, can you help me out with this one? Are we actually increasing it from $2,000 to $10,000?
The expenditures of $2,000 or less is what is established right now. What will change is, as you see, it'll be the kind of the second line there of purchase prices. Let me highlight it here. I think I can highlight it. If the purchase price, the needed property, including computers, exceeds $2,000 and does not exceed what was $5,000, is changing to $10,000. The purchase must be made by the county administrator after obtaining 3 minimum quotes. So that was the supervisory committee. So now this changes from 10,000 to 5,000 to the supervisory committee is now 10,000 or 2,000 to 10,000 for the county administrator, and then for purchases exceeding $10,000 or more, we're still then requiring to go to county board.
And this had to do with bids, correctly? This is what was the threshold for requiring staff to go get 3 bids?
Correct. For 2,000 to 10,000, this requires 3 quotations, and that's brought to the county administrator. Purchases above that, 10,000, then require county board action, which kind of then also then involves the supervisory committee, because in order to get to county board, we need appropriate committee sponsoring.
Okay, so this second part of the rule, Rule 14. So first we were talking about Rule 14A. Now we're talking about Rule 14B. 14A had to do with contracts. 14B has to do with when bids are required. And so there's a little changing of when bids are required. Bids are required 3 of them between 2,000 and 10,000 instead of 2,000 and 5,000. So it's just increasing that $5,000 threshold up to 10. And then it's inserting the county administrator, and it's removing the appropriate committee of the county board for those $2,000 to $10,000 purchases. So hopefully I summarized that accurately, and we're all on the same page. But if we're not, jump in.
That was the correct summary, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The next change is in 14D, and let's see, right now it says this is about program initiatives and grants. And right now it says that no department of the county government may apply for a grant without approval by the county board. And it strikes the word county, it strikes the word board, and it replaces it with administrator. And then it says if the grant requires matching funds, in-kind match, or adding personnel, it will require approval by the county board before submission. So it sounds like it kind of removes the requirement for it to go to the county board, but if it requires matching funds or an in-kind match or personnel, it's still got to go to the county board. So that's the change there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
By the time you get to the next one or two, I'm going to forget what the previous one was. This one is fine, but the one before, I'd like to, do you want to go through them all and then have me forget half of them?
No, I don't want that. So go ahead about the one before. This was the one about 3 bids, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good with this one. Okay. And I don't know if are you going to have a motion on each one, or you just want us to either dissent or assent?
It will be a motion to approve all of these at the same time, and unless you and Mr.
Okay,
Severson
well,
want to.
then I'd like to have an opportunity to discuss along the way ones that I may have questions about, so that I can decide whether I'm going to assent or consent or dissent.
Absolutely.
So could
Do you
you
have
go
any-
back to? Could you go back to that previous one again?
Yep, the one about 3 bids. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and then before that, besides the bids, there were other things.
Yeah,
The
there was
10,000?
the one about the size of the contracts.
Yes, yes. There was that. Did it start out with contracts? Did it start out with expenditures?
We started out with
The previous item that you discussed, not the one we just finished discussing.
yeah. So we've discussed 3 items so far: contracts, expenditures, and grants.
All right. The previous one.
Expenditures?
Yes.
Yep. What are your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Well, you had an expenditure there that would go to the administrator if it was more than $10,000, I believe. Is that correct?
No, it's expenditures would go to the administrator if they're between 2,000 and 10,000.
Okay, so a department head could expend anything less than 2,000.
That's correct.
Okay. What if you've got a department that's got a small budget, like, say, the fair committee? I don't know, they're
Well,
allowed to spend more anyway.
This rule would apply equally to all departments, no matter the size of their budget, is my understanding.
All right, fine.
So then I go on, so, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
the rules of the board, and I can't remember what rule, but it states that the fair committee can enter into contracts of up to $7,000.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
okay.
right.
Okay.
I just had this rule up the other day looking at it, and now I took it off of my computer.
That's okay. I think Mr. Langrick's got it right in front of us here, and I'll just read it out loud so that Mr.
Yep.
Seat knows too. The fair committee shall have authority to enter into contracts, make expenditures, and undertake public works projects which involve the expenditure of not more than $7,000 either at one time or within the course of 1 year. So I stand corrected. It doesn't apply equally to all departments if there's an exception. And that looks like at least one exception.
So that, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
in all other cases, expenditures between 2,000 and 10,000 would be subject to review and approval by the administrator.
That's correct.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
So where do we get at the 10,000? Like, where did that number come from? And what's the background behind the 10,000, both on contracts and expenditures?
Well, I did watch the meeting that the Administrator Transition Committee had. I believe that the idea was that because costs go up on things because of inflation and also because there's been some interest at the county board level in not having so many purchases go before the entire county board, that was the interest, that was the reason they wanted to increase it from 5 to 10,000. I'm not sure exactly how $10,000 got picked instead of, say, 7,500 or 15,000 or what have you. But that's what I remember.
In general, it was 5,000.
It was 5,000. Well, it still is. I should say it still is 5,000, but we're considering doubling that from 5 to 10. So, are you uncomfortable with it, Supervisor Severson, or do you have some hesitation with going up to 10,000? Do you think that's too much, or what is your thinking?
I think it's appropriate. I just need to have time to digest it. I'm fine with it. I understand the reasoning of it now, but
Okay.
I just don't know how carried away it could be sometimes. Maybe if people start
Mr.
spending
Chairman,
more money.
Hold on, Mr. Seep. I didn't quite catch everything. What did you say, Supervisor Severson?
Just that I think that with it increasing, it just gives more opportunity to be spending on stuff versus, I don't know. I mean, I understand it and I get it. It just, you can make multiple $7,000 purchases without having to go through anything.
Well, they would not have to go through their committee. They only have to report it to their committee if we and the county board approve this change, but they still would have to go to the administrator. So Mr. Langreck or whoever the administrator would be in future years, not that I want him to leave, but the county administrator would be signing off on that, and they would have to show that they got the appropriate minimum 3 bids. And I'm assuming they would have to also show that it's within their budget, that they can afford to do this.
That's right? I guess what I was getting at right there.
Mr. Langreck,
I'm okay with that as long as there's that check there.
Okay.
I see nothing wrong, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I see nothing wrong with the process of reporting it to the committee, but having it subject to approval only by the administrator. And I think the language should read that the shall be approved by the administrator. But I think it's good policy to inform the committee of every expenditure. Not that you have to ask them for approval, but at least to inform them prior to submitting it for approval.
Yep.
Another subtle change, Mr. Chair, if I can just
Absolutely.
Yep. So another piece that you see underneath the 14A underneath contracts is the language is now says that department heads may enter into a contract on behalf of Richland County with the county administrator's approval. Previously, it said that department heads may not enter. So this is putting onus now on our departments, where they're going to be again have the onus of reviewing contracts and ensuring that the contracts are in the best interests of their departments and the county. So it lines up with our strategic our strategic policy on transitioning authorities from supervisors to management, and that's why that change is also in there, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I was a little confused about how that reads, so I'm just going to go ahead and read that last sentence of 14A under contracts. So I think the way it used to read was department heads may not enter into a contract on behalf of Richland County. Copies of all contracts shall be filed with the county clerk. Now, I think the proposal from the Administrative Transition Committee is that it reads, department heads may enter into any contract on behalf of Richland County with county administrator approval. Department heads will report all contracts to the appropriate committee. Copies of all contracts shall be filed with the county clerk.
One change on that was department heads may enter into a contract versus any contract. Is any was interpreted to be kind of a frivolous assumption there.
Okay, thank you. I was a little confused on that. So the way they wanted to read is department heads may enter into a contract on behalf of Richland County with county administrator approval. So that means that if it's still over $10,000, it's still got to go to the county board, but that department heads may enter into that contract on behalf of Richland County as long as they get that county board approval if it's over $10,000. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is the intentions.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Seep?
I like to, instead of the phrase with administrator's approval, I like the phrase subject to administrator's approval. subject to
Okay.
approval by the county administrator.
Okay, so that'd be basically striking the word with and replacing it with subject to.
Yes, unless Mr. Langrick has another spin on that.
Don't have any concerns with that change, Mr. Chair.
I guess I don't either. I think it's almost the same, but maybe it's just a little stronger, it seems like. What do you think, Mr. Severson?
I like subject to.
Okay. Okay, so we got everyone in agreement on that. So we've gone through contract.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Thorson. Yep.
Yes, I just know that with those additional exceptions, if the Health and Human Services exception for contracts up to $50,000, and it looks like there are some other department similar exceptions that speak more to the committee or for this example, the Health and Human Services Board shall have the authority to enter into contracts. So I don't know if this committee wants to deal with that in a consistent way as well. Currently, the Health and Human Services Board does approve contracts are under $50,000. It is the agency, and I guess it's the director's signature that signs off on those contracts. So I'm not sure if this is an accurate statement in the rules or not, but I just wanted to point that out. That may be a concern as to how this links up with the other changes that you're considering.
Very good.
So as I'm looking at Rule 14, the way Rule 14 is laid out is the first section says, this rule does not take precedence over the following, and then it lists out A through I as different exceptions. The Fair Committee was one of those. Health and Human Services is another. And then we have others from the Highway Committee, LEJC, Pine Valley Board of Trustees. So there are several exceptions. And then after the exceptions are listed out, then it gets into the following items must be approved by the county board. So the exception for Health and Human Services Board would remain if what we are doing is only making changes to the items that the county board must approve in that second part of Rule 14. So as I read this, it would not affect the Health and Human Services Board. Am I reading that correct? Do you think, Mr. Langreck and others?
Mr. Chair, this is
sounds that
Administrator
way to me.
Langrick. I think you do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Langreck.
I was going to say, Director Thorson, were you looking for consideration to have authority transition from the Health and Human Services Board to the Administrator or were you just ensuring that that rule stays in place as is?
I'm not really looking for a particular action, but I just wanted to make sure that the recognition of these exceptions are being treated a little bit differently, and that may be the intention to continue it that way. So I'm not really asking for it to go one direction or the other, but I thought I should point that out and make sure that's considered as you're looking at this.
Thank you, Director Thorson. Mr. Chair.
Yep, it's a good thing to be thinking about. And of course, if there is any desire for a change like that, that could always go through the Health and Human Services Board. And then that could be referred to this committee in the future. Okay, so we've gone through contracts, expenditures, and grants. Are there any other comments or questions about those three sections?
Basically, you're defining the approving authority for each of these categories, expenditure, and further indicating various departments who would be exempt from this new rule. Is that correct?
Well, I should step back and say what I think the overall goal here is to transition some responsibility away from the county board to the county administrator. We had never made any changes to Rule 14 thinking about the administrator having that new model of government. So the Administrator Transition Committee said, we're going to look at, now that we have this new model of government, should we be changing Rule 14 to involve the county administrator and take some of that approving authority away from the county board to streamline and make things go quicker and make things clearer. So that's, I think, the big overall goal here. I do think what you just said, Mr. Seep, is accurate, but I just want to make sure we're looking at the big picture here of why we're doing this.
Fine. I think that there may be other questions about this. I think in general, you're trying to establish that there's an approving authority for every expenditure by every department, right? For every defined expenditure that requires approval.
That's right.
You want a chain of accountability.
That's right. We want to alter the chain of accountability a little bit. I wouldn't say this is a huge change, but there's definitely some changes in here. So.
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question on the grants.
Yeah. What's the question on the? What's your question on
so
that?
what the way it's written right now, it would be that anybody can apply for a grant as long as there's no matching funds, right? And we would be able to accept that grant if it's not matching funds without having any type of approval.
That's how this change is written right now.
Okay, I'm okay with some of that, but then there's other grants out there that where we could get either money or property out of that, and that could be lead into a maintenance nightmare for the county or a possible liability issue with the county by just getting these grants. Yeah, it's nice to get something, but then in the end, we're taking responsibility over that property that we get, and like that costs us more money in the long run if we're just going out and getting something.
Can we throw out an example? Like,
I don't know.
Would the donation by the Simons Foundation for benches on the Pine River Recreational Trail be a good example of what you're talking about?
I mean, it probably could be, but it's just
Like,
hard to say. Like, you know, if you get like a shelter, we have a shelter built, and then all of a sudden now we got roofing costs and all that stuff that we got to maintain because the grant didn't provide for accurate shingles or lifetime of shingles, and now we're spending money that we don't really have on maintenance of that thing, but it's a nice feature to have. I think some type of approval needs to go through where we say, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the county would be willing to take this liability or this risk or this future cost. You know, like the kayak landing down on Highway 80 north, Lake County Highway SR, you know, it's the county's got grant funding for it, but the county's assuming the responsibility of maintaining that.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Now, the way this change is written right now is that it says without approval by the county administrator. It used to say without approval by the county board. And what I'm wondering is, do we maybe need to change that so it says with approval of the county administrator, so that if a department head, say, wants to accept a shelter or a bench or whatever it is, and we're going to be required to maintain that at least someone besides the department head is in on the conversation and is basically signing off on it. Yep, Mr. Seep, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, I would call that the Trojan horse clause. I think it's a good idea to have it again subject to rather than with the administrator's approval. there are cases where you may be accepting a Trojan horse, where the door is open and all the warriors step out and overcome you. Sometimes I thought about the county's acceptance of the large military tank. After it was accepted, it was learned that a lot of expenses may be required if you had a major breakdown. So sometimes that's what I mean by a Trojan horse. I think Mr. Severson's point is well taken, that there should be accountability up to the administrator at least, and that questions of review and approval should be subject should be contingent upon the administrator's final approval. I'm garbling my words, but you know what I mean, I think.
So I think I understand what you're suggesting is under 14D that we strike the word without and replace it with subject to.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think
I'm okay with that. Mr. Severson, are you okay with it?
Will it change without approval by the county administrator to subject to approval by the county administrator?
That's right.
Okay. As long as there's some checks and balances here, not giving free reign out to everybody to spend a dollar.
Yep.
We got to hold people accountable for every dollar that's spent. Even ourselves, we got to be held accountable for that.
Yep.
It might be appropriate to memorialize that particular clause and call it the Severson Trojan horse clause.
I second that motion.
I'm not sure if he wants. Oh, you are going to make that motion,
Mr.
No,
Chairman,
don't.
Mr. Langrek. Okay, Mr. Langrek, what do you think about this? Can we get your opinion on this change that we're suggesting, Mr. Langrek?
if we're looking to change, the middle piece here of you want that to say in a positive of with approval. Is that correct?
No,
No,
we want
subject
to
to.
strike. We want to strike the word without, and we want to replace that word with subject to. So basically, what that does is the opposite of it. It does the opposite of what the Administrator Transition Committee recommended. They recommended that you not approve grants that don't involve matching funds, in-kind match, or adding personnel. We're saying we think you should approve a grant that doesn't involve any of those things, because it could require the county to be entering into additional maintenance responsibilities. And even though the county board doesn't need to necessarily weigh in on that, we're saying someone should weigh in on that, someone with a big view of the county operation, saying that should be you.
Okay, thank you.
And are you okay? Are you okay with that?
Yes, I was just making sure that it lined up. We're starting, the first sentence is kind of a negative exclusion. So if we were changing the back end of it to make sure it still marries up with the front end of the paragraph or the sentence.
Oh, okay. Let me go ahead and read the whole thing, Mr. Seep. Let me go ahead and read the whole thing, and let's see if it makes sense. So it says, no department of county government may undertake a program, initiative, or contract with, or apply and accept a grant with the state of Wisconsin or the federal government, or with any other entity, subject to approval by the county administrator.
Unless subject to. Well, you say no, you've got a negative in the beginning.
Yeah. I'm understanding what he's saying, so let me read it again with your suggested change, Mr. Seat. So the sentence would read, no department of county government may undertake a program, initiative, or contract with, or apply and accept a grant with the state of Wisconsin or with the federal government or with any other entity unless subject to approval by the county administrator.
Well, you
Chair,
don't have to say you don't have to say subject to. Then, since you've got the unless, you can just say, because you got a double negative, you can just say unless approved by the county administrator. You have a double negative in there. Otherwise,
Okay, so I think I understand now that what you're suggesting is that we strike the word without and, actually we strike the word without approval, 2 words, and we replace those 2 words with unless approved.
right. And you leave that phrase no department or whatever may,
Okay,
unless. Nobody
Okay,
can
you
dance
guys-
with me unless I give them permission.
yep. Okay, do you guys need me to read that again?
Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
Corp Counsel Michael
Oh,
Winston.
yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first, since
Sure,
this is your first rules meeting.
Yeah. So my name is Michael Windle. I go by Mike.
Mike, hi.
Hi. Nice to see you again. Our firm, Absolute, has been contracted, at least in the interim, to serve as corporation counsel. And I live here in Richland Center. I'm actually just right now in my apartment. So I will be taking the point. You'll see my face most frequently. I've kind of hit the ground running already, but I wanted to sit here and defy stereotype a little bit by making the language easier to understand. The specificity of the state of Wisconsin or with the federal government or with any other entity, if it's any entity, you don't need to specify any of that. So you could take all of that out. And so with a supervisor seats changes, it would be no department of county government may undertake a program initiative or contract with or apply and accept a grant with, unless approved by the county administrator.
So, Mr. Windle, can you specify which words you want to strike?
If you highlight through approval,
If you could just read the words you want to strike.
sure. So with the state of Wisconsin, or with the federal government, or with any other entity without approval. And then you would replace that with unless approved by.
Okay, so I'm going to make an attempt to read the whole thing as you're suggesting it. So it
Mr.
would
Chairman,
read,
process question here.
go ahead.
First, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy that Mike is on the line with us here. We are pretending to be lawyers, and we got one online, so we can back off from trying to be a lawyer. The process here is this, isn't it? That this product today is going to be put together in a final resolution reviewed by the Corporation Council, isn't it?
So,
Aren't these documents?
Mr. C,
Aren't these?
I think Mr. Windle is here today to give us his advice as we think about recommending this to the county board. Maybe
Yes.
we can just ask Mr. Windle, have you reviewed this before the meeting, or is this your first time being able to review this?
I have gotten through some of it. I have both the committee structure document and then the rules of the board. But then I noticed that these rules were potentially in flux, and so I didn't want to memorize something that may then change in the next meeting or next couple months. And it kind of helps to look at them fresh, especially if you're looking to make changes.
Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, it's a long way to the county board meeting, and there's plenty of time for an orderly process of review and a return in writing from the Corporation Council. Hell, our meeting isn't until the middle of the month or later, third Thursday.
Yeah, and I think it's really up to us today to decide, after we get through these, do we want to forward this directly to the county board? We could choose to refer it back to the Administrator Transition Committee. I think it's assumed, though, process-wise, I think it's a good question you bring up, that Corporation Counsel would review any changes we're recommending, and they might have some opinions or comments on it that they might want to share at county board. If,
Well,
say, we decide to
process-wise-
refer it to the county board.
Mr. Chairman, process-wise, I'd like to see a presumed final document go to the county board rather than have a working document go to them.
Well, and all we can do is make our recommended changes, and if the county board wishes to, further amend it, they certainly have that right to do that.
Yes, I know, but I think that in terms of the work that's being done by the committees thus far, we should agree upon the clumsy wording that goes into a presumed final document and ask the Corporation Counsel to put that in formal form for a resolution for the county board. I don't think we want to be sitting there at the county board meeting and going over the semantics of this once again. That's what these committees are for. First, your transition committee, and now this committee, which seems to be modifying and polishing the work of the transition committee. So all I'm suggesting, and I don't mean to be, too forceful about this, but I think that the county board would expect that by the time it comes to them, there not be a lot of confusion. There may be a question or two. People are prepared to answer those questions if necessary, but it appears to be a final resolution document. They sure as hell don't want to go through all the questions that you and I and the rest of us are going through in these two meetings.
Yeah, and Mr. Seep, my response to that would be that I think we need to be very clear today. If we're amending anything that the Administrator Transition Committee recommended, we need to make that a motion.
Back to the,
hold on, don't interrupt. Wait, don't interrupt, please. We need to formally amend it. We need to be really clear about what we're amending. And then those changes should also go into a document similar to the one that's in front of us right now. So Supervisor Luck, she tracked changes in the rules of the board document. And any changes we would make today would also go in a track changes document, and that would go to the county board. So the county board should be able to see exactly what changes were made at the committee level.
All right, I understand that, and I appreciate that. I apologize for interrupting. Are you saying that then this should go back to Ms. Luck's committee?
I'm not saying that, no.
Okay, that's fine.
That's an option, but I'm not saying I support that. So.
Yeah, well.
Okay.
I wouldn't want
to. I'm going to go back to reading. We need to keep on with the business here, Mr. Seep. So I'm going to read that first sentence under 14D as Mr. Wendell has suggested we change it, and as Mr. Seep has suggested we change it. And then I'm going to check with all three of us to make sure that we're comfortable with it. So this sentence would now read, no department of county government may undertake a program, initiative, or contract with, or apply and accept a grant unless approved by the county administrator. Okay, so Mr. Severson, are you okay with that language change?
With a comment, yes.
Go ahead. What's your comment?
My comment is I like the state and the federal government taken out of that. I like Mr. Wendell's approach. I found an example in my head of what you asked before. Give me an example. This is an example of what I support this 100%. The Safe Routes to School program that Southwest Partners is doing. they're installing the safe route like a sidewalk, but they're going to have it paved in blacktop, and then they're going to give it over to like the city government or county government or to some other entity other than themselves. Well, what that takes with blacktop, it takes money and cost for maintenance costs in the future for that. And that's where, like, yeah, it's a nice gesture, it's good, but now we're taking under this responsibility of maintaining such a thing that could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for blacktop repair, flooding damages, stuff like that. So that was just my comment that I like with having the county administrator's approval, so that he knows, like, hey, maybe this needs to go to committee first for approval that we're going to take this on.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Seep, do you have it? How do you feel about this change, and do you have any additional comments?
Well, fine. I very much appreciate Mr. Wendell's input here. I do not, in terms of process, first this went to the transition committee, then it went from transition committee to this committee. Both of us have worked it over and massaged it. I don't want to go to a county board meeting and see a debate go on between the transition committee and the finance and personnel committee. I believe there's plenty of time to make sure that we have an agreed upon document between the two committees, so put together in a presumed final resolution and rule to put before the county board. We sure don't want to sit there and debate at the county. Our job is to debate this and put it together ahead of time. It's not to go to the county board meeting and have a debate with one another. Let them debate if they want, if they have further questions, but we should have our questions resolved and be prepared to answer their questions. That's all I'm saying here. I would defer to Mr. Wendell and to Council Wendell and the committee and certainly Mr. Langrecht to make sense of this whole thing. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but on the other hand, I agree with the Trojan horse clause.
Okay, well, let's keep that in mind as we get to the end of this document. Then you and me and Mr. Severson are going to decide on what we want to do with this document at that point. So let's keep going through the document. Let's talk specifically about changes, and then we'll decide what we want to do. So we're going to keep moving on here. So let's go to 14F. That's the section on surplus county property. So the Administrator Transition Committee has recommended that the word supervising committee be deleted and it be replaced with department with approval by the county administrator in this section. So I'm going to read the whole sentence. So Mr. Seep, you can understand the context there. So right now, it currently says, the county board rule as it stands today says, if no other county department has use for the surplus equipment, it is then to be liquidated by the supervising committee by the best means possible. And so the Administrative Transition Committee wants it to read instead, if no other county department has use for the surplus equipment, it is then to be liquidated by the department with approval of the county administrator by the best means possible. So, Mr. Severson, how do you feel about that change? Are you okay with it?
I do feel okay with it. I'm just not, in certain circumstances, I think that the last sentence should be changed. Like the proceeds from all the sales of surplus county property shall be deposited in the general fund. Maybe they sell that stuff and it gets deposited back into the committee. But I know there's been discussion about that in the past on other things, that it should be deposited in the general fund. But whatever, I approve of it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Seep, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that I think it's fine, and keeping in mind that all rules can be changed.
Okay, that's true. We can always suspend the rules. That's right. Okay, and I'm okay with this change too, so I think we're all good with 14F. Let's move on to 14G. This is budget matters. Currently, this reads, the board rule says all budget issues and fund transfers must go through the Finance and Personnel Committee and if necessary to the county board. And they would like to suggest that, looks like 7 words be inserted here. They would like it to read, all budget issues and fund transfers must go through the county administrator who will report to the Finance and Personnel Committee and if necessary to the county board. So I'm gonna start us off here on this one. So I believe that there are times when fund transfers, they do come to the Finance and Personnel Committee and then they go to the county board. I know that there was an issue with Health and Human Services. I think this was about 6-10 months ago, where they wanted to transfer funds from one account to the institutional placement fund, and that went to the county board possibly, or maybe just went to Finance and Personnel Committee and died there. So I'm thinking of that example, because if we did approve this change, it would mean a change like that would no longer go to the Finance and Personnel Committee. It would just be reported to the Finance and Personnel Committee. So that committee would no longer have approval authority over it. So I'm a little hesitant, I guess, but I don't want to get into too much micromanaging either. You know, especially we have some very small fund transfers that come to our committee and the county board sometimes, you know, they're like a couple $100s. And some of that stuff I think it distracts us from the big issues that we need to be focused on instead. So I have mixed emotions about this change. Who wants to go first on this one after me?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll say this. I'll go along with it as you stated. Again, there's no prescription for all illnesses, and everything is subject to change as problems arise.
Okay, what do you think, Mr. Severson?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right, well, let's keep on moving then.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make 2 comments.
Absolutely, go for
So
it.
in regards to this change, we'd have to keep in mind, we might have to go back then and make sure our structure document language matches. Underneath structure document for the authorities and responsibilities of finance and personnel, underneath sentence K or bullet K, it says make fund transfers between budget lines within the budgets of individual departments or committees in an annual county budget. So that it's not a showstopper. It's just something we'll have to keep in mind that we'll have to go back and tidy up. Another is, and I don't have the statute off the top of my head here. It has to do with regards to municipal budgeting, where if we're doing fund transfers across departments or across what our budget confines are for functions or departments, then it would be doing a budget update, which would require to go back to the county board. So even with these types of changes, there's still the factor of if we're going past transitioning funds from one department or one function to another department or function, that we would have to take it back as a budget amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so it sounds a little fuzzy on that one, but yeah, let's just keep moving on here. I'm going to hold my hesitation at this point. Going through the rest of this document, I believe that's everything that's of any significance. There was one typo that was corrected somewhere. The only other suggestion I'm going to make at this point, because it keeps tripping me up pretty regularly, is I think Rule 14 is confusing how it's formatted. The first section of Rule 14 that we talked about earlier, which are the exceptions, it's listed as A through I. And then the second section of Rule 14, and these are the expenses that got to go to the county board, it's listed as A through G. And I think it would be a lot easier if instead of having two 14As and two 14Bs, if we just continued the lettering in the second section to pick up where it leaves off in the first section. So right now, 14A, the second section is contracts. I'm suggesting that would be 14J. And then 14B expenditures would become 14K. And then it'd be easier for us to keep track of what section people are talking about. Mr. Seep, are you okay with that change?
Yes, there are so many hoops and jumps here and sidetracks. When we get all done with this document, I think that it would be very helpful for collaboration between our administrator and corporate counsel to clean this up and ensure the logic.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I want to know if you're okay with this specific change.
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Severson, are you okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got basically three changes then that we would want to make to what the Administrator Transition Committee recommended. So I'm going to read back those three changes, and then I'm going to make a motion to amend, and then I think we need to vote on this. And then if that motion to amend passes, then we'll vote on the entire motion that came from the Administrator Transition Committee. So these are the three changes. Under 14A contracts, in the third sentence, we would be striking the word with before county administrator, and we'd be replacing it with subject to. The second change would be under 14D, and that's program initiatives and grants. And in this section, we would be striking the words, and this is in the first sentence, striking the words with or apply and accept a grant with the state of Wisconsin or with the federal government or with any other entity without approval. So we'd be striking all those words, and we would be replacing those words with unless approved. And then the third change would be to basically re-letter the second section of Rule 14 so that the contract section is J, expenditures are K, public works projects are L, and so on and so forth, all the way down through budget matters. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to amend that those changes be made. Is there a second for that?
Kerry Severson will second.
Okay, so a motion by myself and a second by Severson. All those in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Seep, are you still there? Mr. Seep, I think, let me check here. I think you may have muted yourself, and so you need to press *6. I'm not sure. I'm just checking the phone number on there. Oh yeah, he's on his wife's phone right now, so I just was making sure that was him. So Mr. Seep, if you can hear us, you need to press *6.
It does show that he's muted. I don't know if somebody can unmute him that's got control over our meeting. But
He can't
Yeah,
unmute anymore. He has to do it himself.
okay. Okay, I think what we'll do while we're waiting for him to figure out how to unmute is we'll move on to agenda item number 7, broadband fiber backbone effort in Richland County. So I believe we have a guest with us today to talk about this. I just need to go back to my agenda here. I'm sorry, I need to go back to our meeting materials and open up the cover sheet, not our agenda. So this came from
Can you hear me?
Supervisor. Yep, we can hear you. Are you in favor of that motion to amend? We can pick back agenda item number 6 back up so we can dispose of that.
Well, it's an interesting piece of sausage, but I'm in favor of it as long as I get a piece of the sausage.
Okay. All right, so that motion to amend passes. So now we have an amended motion. So the original motion that came from the Administrator Transition Committee, I'm just going to read that. To motion recommending forwarding the rules of the county board document with suggested changes to the county board. So I'm looking for a motion on that recommendation to forward this to the county board.
I will make that motion, but I'd like to have an opportunity to second.
Okay, so we got a motion by Seep. I'll second it this time. A second by Murphy Lopez. Go ahead, Mr. Seep.
Yes, discussion. What about the question of having some consent to this or agreement to this by the transition committee? We could have a joint meeting with them if the chair of that committee feels it's necessary. I don't like to have one committee change the recommendations of another committee and then come to the committee and find a surprise in my lap. Suppose we go to the county board.
The reason I'm in favor of forwarding this to the county board as is because I don't believe our changes are really very significant. I do think it's okay to debate things at the county board. I think we need to be able to do that sometimes. You know, I just think I'm okay with some dissent and debate like that. I don't think this warrants having a special meeting, but certainly if you and Mr. Severson think we do need a special meeting, you could overrule me or we could have, we could vote this down and then we could make a separate motion to, request a special meeting of the Administrator Transition Committee and the Rules and Resolutions Committee to meet jointly before it goes to county board. But that's where I'm at. I think it's okay to go to county board at this point. Mr. Severson, what are your thoughts?
Comment by whom?
Mr. Severson, what are your thoughts?
no comments. I'm good with whatever.
You're good with whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
If Mr. Langrick is comfortable with this process, I'll go along with it.
Okay, Mr. Langrick, can you comment on your comfort?
I'm comfortable having listened to both meetings. It feels like the intentions of the rules and resolutions today with your changes are lining up with the intentions of the Administrator Transition Committee. So I don't foresee a conflict, but there, I can't promise there might be something seen in the semantics or outside the intentions. But overall, it seems like both of the bodies' intentions are in line.
I would like to know when it comes to county board that it has been reviewed by corp counsel.
Can you comment on that, Mr. Langrick?
Yes, we have Attorney Wendell is here with us today reviewing the changes in real time. And he'll be, he's going to be able to review the resolution language to ensure that the resolution is stating the intentions of the changes talked about by the two committees. If we're looking to have a complete review of all the county board rules, I would say that may be appropriate down the line, but with the other things that are in the hopper, I would defer that until later meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on that. Let's go ahead and take a vote on this because we need to move on. We have a guest here, Mr. C.
I know you need to move on, but I want my question answered, Mr. Chairman.
Did you not get your question answered?
I want my question answered. My question is, are we going to be presenting a document that has been reviewed by the Corporation Council? Is that what the administrator intends to do?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not just talking about our discussion with Mr. Wendell today. I'm talking about the final presumed document.
Mr. C. Mr. Langreich said yes. So your question has been answered.
Good.
Okay. So all those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Okay, we got a lot of work done. That was a toughie, but we got through it. So now let's move back to agenda item number 7, which is broadband fiber backbone effort in Richland County. So Supervisor Luck requested that we consider a resolution that would be forwarded to the county board supporting the installation of broadband fiber backbone infrastructure in Richland County. So she has arranged for a representative of Bug Tussle to be in attendance today to share information about their efforts to install this broadband fiber backbone infrastructure in Richland County. There are 3 attachments, and is that representative from Bug Tussle here today?
Yes, I am.
Okay, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the committee, please?
No problem. My name is Mitch Olson. I am an attorney by trade, and I've been with Bug Tussle since the beginning of the year. And I'm kind of spearheading this program we call the Road to Digital Equality, which is a broadband expansion program throughout Wisconsin.
Great. If you wouldn't mind just walking us through the materials, is it Mr. Olson? Did I get your name right?
Olson is correct. I certainly don't need to be that formal. Mitch is fine.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so we have 3 attachments. Do you have access to all 3 of those attachments?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, if you could just walk us through those, preferably in order, so that Mr. Langreich can show them on the screen as you're going through, that'd be great. So go ahead and take it away.
Okay, page 1 is the cover that our marketing team did a pretty nice job putting together. The name of the program, as I said, is the Road to Digital Equality, ROAD being an acronym for Rural Open Access Design. A big impediment in our industry is when companies install infrastructure, they do it as a claim staking exercise and they don't let anybody share so they can mark their territory, have that territory covered and cut down on competition. And that's not our MO. We're looking to come into Richland County with this fiber, tell people where it is, have it open for their access so that competition comes in and that'll ultimately lead to a better project or product for the consumer. All right, you can go to the next page. Our program comes out in a couple of steps. Primarily, we are a fixed wireless broadband provider at this point, and we have already constructed a number of towers in Richland County. So we would be funding the equipment to put on those towers for fixed wireless broadband. The purpose of that is to get everybody internet access or improved internet access in the immediate future. Just depending on the availability of equipment, since the towers are already constructed, that would be very quick that we would get the equipment mounted on those towers and customers would be able to purchase fixed wireless broadband, speeds of 25 megabits down and 5 up for $50 a month. So that is going to get outlived by fiber to the premises. Historically speaking, fiber to the premises was going to be much too expensive to serve rural areas with all of the grant monies that are available with the federal government changing the standard on what speeds residential customers need to have. A lot of money is flowing into those programs. We don't want to rely on grant funding, so we're looking to do a bonding initiative to fund our middle mile fiber project, which will facilitate fiber to the premises throughout Wisconsin and, in your case, Richland County. So we'll install a middle mile fiber infrastructure that other providers will be able to plug into to bring fiber to the premises to all the households in Richland County. You can go to the next page. So talk a little bit more about the financing piece of this. It's a conduit bonding program. So effectively, we would be the debtor, but we require more or less a cosign from Richland County. Formally speaking, the issuing county is going to be Fond du Lac, and then Richland County would be required to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Fond du Lac County to secure the debt associated with Richland County's, or the assets that'll be installed in Richland County. That debt obligation would be third in line, first behind all of Bug Tussle's assets, then behind all of Bug Tussle's assets that are part of the program in Richland County. So only if both of those things prove insufficient to cover the debt would the program cost Richland County any amount of money. In addition to providing the infrastructure and expanding the broadbands throughout Richland County, we'd be willing to pay the county 40 basis points on the outstanding amount of the debt, which we'll go over in a little bit. And we'll also reserve some of the fiber for the county's use, up to 24 strands out of our 144 strand bundle, to facilitate the county's needs if that's something that the county is interested in using. Okay, if you want to next page. Thanks. So this is just kind of a little bit a layout of how we look at this project from a big picture. In some of the counties, and I don't think we're planning on doing a grant with Richland County, at least in the July round, just because the timing is kind of wonky to get through all of that. But we're funding, like I said, through the bond initiative. It doesn't cost the county any money, and we're going to work with other providers down the road, largely the RDOF winners who are needing to come into communities throughout Wisconsin to plug in fiber to the premises. We're going to put the backbone in so that they have something to plug into, so that the money that they have available through RDOF is going to be better spent actually plugging in customers as opposed to building infrastructure. If you want to, last page, or I think there's two more, but you can next, or one more, sorry. Yeah, the timeline for this is pretty aggressive as far as the approvals and things are concerned, because we want to get the bonds issued by the end of the year. And we know that all the counties do their budgeting throughout kind of the November, December timeline. So we want to kind of get out ahead of that as best we can. We're looking to have county approvals through July and August. There's some hearings that have to get done through the rest of the fall. And then the bonds would ultimately be issued near the end of October. The fixed wireless network, Richland County is at a little bit of an advantage because we've already put the towers up in most instances. Then the middle mile fiber would follow beyond that in the next 2 to 3 years. And then the fiber to the premises is going to come in following the infrastructure's installation. The last page is just contact sheet. So we can go on to the mapping. Thank you. The map is very preliminary. It's just kind of looking at what we think an appropriate route would be for the fiber. If the county has any input, we can certainly tweak this and push it in kind of various directions. The fiber serves a pretty substantial purpose for Bug Tussle to connect the towers in a more redundant way than just having microwave links. So that's a driving factor on our primary route, is that we want to go by as many of our towers as possible because it serves a need there. But if the county wants to have all of the town halls connected, or the highway building connected with the courthouse or whatever it takes. That's certainly a discussion we can have down the road about where we want the route to go specifically. Okay, next. This map is the same fiber route map from earlier overlaid with the RDOF award winners for Richland County. So all of the green areas are areas that are funded through the RDOF program. It's a little bit of a blessing and a curse because one, it's federal money that's available for broadband expansion that's been awarded and associated with Richland County. On the other hand, those portions are essentially not eligible for any of the PSC monies that are available because the PSC kind of views those as already funded. So we're looking to build our fiber out with a pretty substantial focus through those RDOF areas to help those RDOF providers through or build out their network, hopefully making it more attractive for them as where they're going to start their build because a lot of the legwork's already been done. And then they'll be able to use it more quickly as well as spend less money because the infrastructure piece has already been done. And then next map, please. Yeah, this is an overlay of the existing telephone exchanges. So this kind of explains who are the current providers in those areas. The beige, we'll say, block is Frontier. And if you kind of back and forth between the last two maps, as you'll notice, there's a pretty one-to-one overlay between Frontier's area and where the RDOF money is, as well as CenturyLink, the pink area in the south. So those are, in my opinion, who has been neglecting Richland County. They have provided service here in the past. They have their flag in the ground. They've claimed this territory, and they've proven not that interested in upgrading it at a pace that the government would want them to, or that the consumers would necessarily want them to. They're the only show in town by nature of kind of how the old telephone exchanges used to work. And so they don't really care what the customer wants at the end of the day, or they're not willing to make the investment in improving the customer experience. Okay, so if you go to the first page of the budgetary sheet here. So this is pretty back of the envelope math on just what we have or what we need to do. We have 17 current towers that we have built for AT&T through Richland County, and we would need to purchase equipment to put on those for fixed wireless broadband. We put up a couple additional towers to backfill some more fixed wireless space and fix those with broadband so that we'd be able to do that 25 meg down and 5 meg up to as many people in the immediate future as possible, while that fiber, which is eventually going to be everywhere, is going to catch up to everything. The total cost of the project is $8.7 million. The lower portion of the sheet is kind of how profitable the Richland County portion of the sheet is, which is a little in the weeds, but it's there if you want to look at it. But again, at the end of the day, is we just need Richland County's cosign on an $8.7 million bond, a debt instrument. We'll make the payments against it. If you go to the last page, we'll make payments to Richland County as 40 basis points of the outstanding amount of the debt. So the first year of the bond, it's $35,000 cash positive to Richland County. Throughout the lifetime of the bonds, we'll pay about $540,000 to Richland County for the right to borrow your guys' credit. And we make all the payments on the bonds, and the fiber gets put in the ground. Okay, the last thing I don't have a ton of insight on because that came from our outside counsel, but it's just a sample resolution that you guys would have to pass. There's an initial resolution that that we need through July and August if everything works there. And that's essentially saying that we're going to participate in the program and that we're going to guarantee the debt associated with our county. And then throughout the course of the fall, we'd work out the specifics of it, and there would be another final resolution done at that point. I'm a better reactionary thinker than I am just a public speaker. So if anyone has any questions, now would be good.
Okay, I'm going to start us off, and then we'll hand it off to the other two committee members. So what is the amount of debt that would be taken out and put against our debt load? Is it that $8.7 million figure?
Yep.
Okay, and then, so essentially you want us to be a co-signer, so, what if, say in the year 2040, Bug Tussle goes bankrupt? Who's responsible for making the payments?
At that point, the county would be responsible for making the payments in the event Bug Tussle's assets don't cover the amount of the debt, and the fiber and towers in Richland County themselves don't cover the balance of the debt.
Okay, so is there any sort of an instrument that counties use sometimes to, say like, if you did go bankrupt, is there any sort of insurance that government agencies can purchase that would cover that cost in case that were to happen?
I can't speak to that. I haven't seen that anywhere.
Okay. And then, like, you had a line going along County D between Rockbridge and Bloom City on your map. And one question I have is, I know that Laval Telephone Co-op is burying a fiber line along that road right now. So I'm not quite understanding, like, why would Bug Tussle be burying a line when Laval Telephone Co-op is burying a line there? Can you shed some light on that?
Because the majority of current internet providers don't play well with others. So if we contact Laval and ask them everywhere they have fiber, they probably won't tell us. And so if we wanted to design our network and incorporate all of the fiber they have in the ground, they make that impossible. So in a lot of instances, there's probably going to be some routes here that have to get overbuilt, that we are covering an area that is theoretically already covered by a piece of backbone, or by even an area where fiber to the premises already runs through. But since the ISPs are so protective of their territory, again, tied to where the telephone exchanges used to be, they don't want other people to come in. They don't want other people to compete. And that's just what we want to do, is we're not trying to box them out. If they want to leave space on our fiber, absolutely, that's what it's for. If they want to come in and do fiber to the premises, same places that we do, that's great. That's good for the consumer. Competition lowers prices.
Okay, and then my last question is not for you, but for Mr. Wendell. Have you had a chance to look this over and think about legally how we can protect ourselves in case for some reason the county would be on the hook for this at some point, or is that something you can look into?
It's absolutely something you can look into. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would just need to see something more in terms of like a contract or proposed language. And I'm sure that Bug Tussle has a document for that. And if I can be provided that, I can definitely review it, but the county will have options.
Okay. All right. Mr. Severson or Mr. Seep, whichever one of you wants to go first.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to go first if Mr. Severson would rather not, or I'll defer. I'm
Go
very
ahead.
flexible today.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You spoke first.
Yes. This is sort of a rush for me. I think that this whole question requires much more study and reflection, and I think we need to confer with others as well as our corporation counsel. A pretty complex issue, and a lot of questions to be resolved before. We're not required to take any action today anyway, are we?
So
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Luck suggested forwarding this to the county board, but no, we're not required to follow that suggestion. We could say postpone it until we get more information.
Yes, we're certainly not ready to forward this to the county board.
I concur with Mr. C. I don't have faith in Bug Tussle personally, so that they would honor their payment plan that they've presented.
Okay, so I think probably what would be in order then, or what might make sense, is to make a motion to postpone this item until we've received more information about how to protect the county's resources in the event that we would enter into something like this. So I'll go ahead and make that motion to postpone until we get more information.
I will second that motion.
Okay, so a motion by myself and a second by Seep. Any discussion on the motion to postpone? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Supervisor Severson, are you in favor of it?
I don't really care to comment on
So,
this issue.
so are you abstaining from?
I would like to, yes.
Well, then it just dies because I think we have to have all three people vote, since three
No,
people make
you
the
have
quorum.
2/3. You have 2/3 of the people present. You can pass the motion.
Oh yeah. Okay, you're right. Okay, so I think Supervisor Seep, are you in favor of the motion to postpone? Supervisor Seep, did you hear me? Are you in favor of the motion to postpone?
Aye.
Okay, I am as well. So
Aye.
okay, so that motion carries. So, Mr. Olson, thanks for coming today, and we'll look forward to getting more of our questions answered. And I'm sure Supervisor Luck has some information she'd like to share with us as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this lands on our agenda again next month. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to say Supervisor Luck has my contact information. If anyone needs to reach out, we're very open book with kind of everything. So thanks, guys.
Okay, great. So let's move on to agenda item number 8, Strategic Plan Committee. So this is another item that came from Supervisor Luck today. So this has a cover sheet to go with it as well. And I'm just gonna kind of go over this cover sheet. So she is recommending today that we make a motion to recommend to the county board the creation of a new committee called Strategic Plan and Oversight Committee. She is suggesting that it could consist of 5 supervisors and possibly other stakeholders. Could potentially say have a department head, an employee, and or a citizen of the county. And the background on this is that beginning in January of this year, the county board did 4 strategic planning sessions with Southwest Regional Planning, and they drafted a document, Southwest Regional Planning, giving guidance for our strategic plan. She is saying here that the meetings only sought input from county board supervisors, and that a successful plan will need to include input from stakeholders, and a committee would give the opportunity for all stakeholders to participate in the development of the plan. After the strategic plan is also complete or adopted by the county board too, progress will have to be monitored, and the committee should meet several times per year to speak with stakeholders about progress and report back to the county board. So she has a resolution that's drafted here. She has a couple of question marks around the membership and how often it should meet, but that's her recommendation. Also, this would require some funding to come from the county board fund account, because of course we'd be adding another committee and people would be paid per diems and mileage for any of these committee meetings. So that is checked at the bottom of the cover sheet under financial review. So I wonder first if maybe you guys want to comment. I do have some thoughts on this as well, but do either one of you want to start us out on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is certainly serious public interest in broadband service in the county. It's certainly lacking. There's
Mr.
also
Seep,
serious.
that's Mr. Seep. Mr. Seep, we're not talking
Yeah.
about broadband right now. We're on the
You're talking
agenda
about.
item strategic plan committee.
Oh, you're talking
So
about
those
the
comments aren't
proposal for a
relevant.
study committee. Well, I
For a
take my
strategic
comment
plan,
back. But you're talking about the formation of a committee to make recommendations to the county board with regard to the subject that we were talking about just prior to this, right?
no,
No,
that's not what we're
Then what
talking
are
about.
you suggesting?
This
I can't
is a
hear you very
committee. Okay. I'll try to speak a little closer. So this would be a committee to make recommendations regarding the county board strategic plan. This is the topic that we met 4 times about. The whole county board met 4 times this past winter and
Yes, I
spring,
know.
and we met with Troy Maggie from Southwest Regional Planning Commission.
Yes, I know.
Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with a few comments then. So the strategic plan draft that Troy Maggie brought to the county board, I believe it was about 3 months ago, he presented it to the county board. Since then, there's been some interest from myself and from a few other county board members in making some changes to that draft document. And what Supervisor Luck is suggesting here is that what would be best is to bring those conversations out into the open, make sure that any discussions are being appropriately notified to the public and to county board members and to department heads, employees of the county, to the public as a whole. And so I'm very supportive of the creation of this committee, because I do think we need to make several changes to the draft plan. And I don't think we can make those changes at the county board. I think there's too many points, too many sections, too many substantive issues that need to be discussed. So I'm in support of creating this committee.
Well, I would agree to that, and I would support it.
Okay, Supervisor Severson, do you have thoughts you want to share?
I'm in agreement with creating this new committee.
Okay. Do you guys have thoughts about, should there be anyone besides the county board members? Should there be other stakeholders? And if so, what would you suggest?
I like the ideas of having citizen members be a part of this committee, and like in conversation with Mr. Supervisor Caro, he thought that we needed to work with the city, so maybe our city partners or our village townspeople present on the strategic planning, that we need to include them in on it also.
Okay, Mr. Seep, do you have any thoughts on adding additional members?
Well, I would say it depends upon which goal. If you're targeting a specific goal, you may need expertise related to that particular goal. Are you focusing on a particular goal of this strategic plan?
You know, the strategic plan, I've gone over it a couple times, and it has all sorts of goals. I can see, I don't think you could make the membership of the committee be such that you'd have experts around every goal. But I do think you could get a variety of perspectives on a committee, and you could certainly invite people to come in who would be experts, to be special guests and hear from them. So
topic to topic, you would look at different experts.
I'm suggesting that I think that's maybe how that could be handled. Yeah, yes.
Fine. The members may not necessarily be the experts, but they may want to vote on calling in experts for a particular area or topic. I get it. I'm all in favor of that.
Okay, and do you guys think we should maybe, in our motion to recommend this to the county board, should we be specific about the number of supervisors and other stakeholders? Right now, she has 5 supervisors listed here. Say, would we be comfortable with 5 supervisors and two members of the
Mr.
public?
Chairman?
Or yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think you should have 5 supervisors, but I think that then, as part of the charter of the committee, that they should be empowered to and authorized to call in various experts as needed, depending upon the goal that we're focusing on.
Okay, so you'd rather just leave it at 5
Including
supervisors.
stakeholders can be brought in for input and advice, but they don't have to be necessarily voting members of the committee.
Okay. Okay, what do you think, Supervisor Severson? Are you okay with that approach, or would you rather make it more formal where there are additional voting members from the community?
I think there should be some additional voting members of the community. It's not really our document. It is our document, but it's for the county as a whole and the citizens that we represent. It's their strategic plan also. So maybe the towns association should have a representative on there, and the city council should have a representative. So we're getting all the people involved.
Do they have to be voting members? They could come in to pull input and advice. But this is a county board decision, and the county board can reach out to all kinds of stakeholders and experts and municipal bodies, whatever. But none of them have to be voting members and shouldn't be. This is the county decision. And it's going to be a county responsibility. They're not going to be signing in for co-signing for the bonding.
Well, so Mr. Seep, I think what Mr. Severson is saying is yes, he would like to have some additional voting members that are represented by outside groups. I hear the difference of opinion. I think my opinion is I would tend to agree with Supervisor Severson. I think if we had some additional stakeholders as voting members, I thought that worked really well with the administration study committee, that ad hoc committee where we had Joanne Krulotz and Barb Scott, a couple other department heads who were part of that committee. I thought it did help to build some buy-in. So I would tend to support that. I'm wondering, Supervisor Severson, if we should put a specific number on it so that when it gets to the county board, it's got a little bit more structure to it. And do you have any opinions on what that number should be? I don't know if you heard that, Supervisor Severson. Are you?
I didn't. You were breaking up.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm wondering if you have a specific number of people in mind.
I don't. I haven't thought about it, I guess, up until now.
Okay. Well, maybe what we should do is just, recommend this going forward to the county board, but not get into this whole issue of additional members. That just might have to be worked out at the county board level. And obviously there's a little difference of opinion with the three of us here. So it might be just simplest to, for one of you to make a motion to recommend this to the county board, the creation of a new committee.
I would move to that.
Okay, motion by Severson. I'll go ahead and second the motion. So second by Murphy Lopez. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor?
I hesitantly support the motion.
Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I already heard from Supervisor Seep on that, so that motion does carry. So this will go forward to the county board now. Moving on to agenda item number 9, rule number 16B, meal rate reimbursement. So Mr. Langrick, can you take this one, please?
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion, 2 motions. Pull up my share screen here. There we go. Looking today for possibly 2 motions. First one is to recommend resolution to the county board to amend the Richland County rules of the board number 16 policy regarding an increase in reimbursement of meals from $20 a day to $25 a day, and then language changes either today as presented or with amendments. And then looking for a second motion today to recommend proposal employee handbook changes to Finance and Personnel Committee for consideration of the same, of an increase in meal reimbursement from $20 to $25. The current language that you'll see from the county board rules is as follows, and I'll read it for Mr. Seep so you can understand what we're doing here. Underneath Rule 16, it says supervisors shall follow the following expense reimbursements policies for supervisors while engaged in county business. Paragraph 1 says the actual expenses for meals shall be reimbursed in the amount not to exceed, currently stating $20 is stricken and replaced with $25 and any one day, and then the effective date is changed to January 1st, 2022. We're including then a paragraph 2, alcohol beverages is not reimbursable expense, to match language that we have in the handbook. We'll then have a paragraph changes to what is paragraph 4. Well, instead of saying receipts shall be required in all cases, we'll have changes matching what is in the handbook. And then in addition, detailed itemized receipts shall be required in all cases. And then in parentheses, lodging invoices indicating room service charges will not suffice for reimbursement. And then a paragraph 5, we're adding language that says reimbursement of meals is only warranted when traveling out of the county on county business. That is kind of implied as of right now, so we're specifying that. And then it goes on to say all supervisor meal reimbursements must be approved by striking the audit committee and inserting county clerk. Reason for that change is that usually the payments and checks are released to supervisors prior to audit committee meeting through the payroll system. So we'll have our check and balance of the county clerk monitoring. Recommended changes then to the employee handbook would just be a change to paragraph 5. In addition onto the detailed itemized receipts shall be required in all cases. We're including then the language of lodging invoices indicating room service charges will not suffice. The following, and then also in the handbook, then we're including reimbursements of meals is only warranted when traveling out of the county on county business. All employee meal reimbursements must be approved by the department head. So that is our check and balance on department employees through the department head. Administrator's notes on this item. The following proposed changes are made with a desire for consistency and consideration for the first one, increase in expenditures. This would be a 25% or a $5 per day increase. Leniency. Currently, the language allows for discretion within a day and does not stipulate amounts per meal. There's considerations for instances of does the lodging provide breakfast? Does the venue registration provide lunch? Is it a partial day an event in consideration for that amount? Additional weekly leniencies of grocery purchasing in bulk on Monday to cover Monday through Friday training event was also considered, but this leads to questions of what if the person ends training short? Why can't they make daily trips? And as well as if somebody then submits a payment for a $125 restaurant bill on Monday, it might also raise questions on the intent of the policy. So I recommend that we keep the leniency set to a day amount versus trying to cover a bulk purchase or taking it the other way to scrutinizing the leniency down to a single meal. Auditing concerns, we still require itemized receipts per day linking expenditures to the event. And then finally, approval. Supervisor approval is transitioned again from auditing committee to the clerk. As payments are often released prior to the audit committee, and then employee approval is specified to the department head. The overall impact estimated for budgets, we took two numbers. We looked at expenditures from 2021 and also from, I'm sorry, that should have been, there's a typo on here, that should have been from 2019. 2019 expenditures, we had about $8,459.52, which came out of meals. For 2020, it was down to a little over $5,600, but that was a COVID year. So if we take both of those and times it by an additional 25%, we're looking at a range there of $7,000 to $10,000, or an estimated $2,114 annually as an estimated expense. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so the reason you're bringing forward these employee handbook changes are because if we recommend this change to the county board rules, it would likely also then affect the employee handbook if we're going to be consistent. Is that correct?
As you stated, as to be consistent, yes. You're not obligated to do that, but there has been conversations with finance and personnel of which they were looking to make changes as well. So this would be a consistent approach, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. And then my only question has to do with the issue of someone purchasing groceries and spreading them out over the week. So if I, under this proposed policy, if on Monday I went and I purchased $50 worth of groceries to get me through the week, and I didn't go out to any restaurants, under this current policy change that is being recommended, would I be reimbursed for any of those groceries or none of those?
The current language allows for a $25 or I should say, the language as proposed would allow for a $25 expenditure per day. So if you purchased $50 of groceries on a Monday, the reimbursement would be for $25 of that, the way it is right
okay
now,
so then
the way it is proposed.
So I could purchase $25 worth of groceries on Monday, and if I was away on county business for 5 days, I could go back to the grocery store on Wednesday and I could purchase another $25 to get me through the rest of the week. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. It is the leniency is put at $25 per day for reimbursement.
Okay, but nothing in this proposed change would preclude me from going to the grocery store. I wouldn't have to go to a restaurant. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're looking for food type reimbursement items.
Okay, well, I'm supportive so far of this, so that makes sense. Mr. Seat, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, instead of going out every day and shopping for $25 worth of groceries, except in view of perishables, you probably could spend more than that. As if you spent $50 the first day, you would apply $25 to the first day and $25 to the second. That's could be done, but I can understand $25 per day because you're going to have probably some perishables.
Mr. Seep, are you supportive of these changes?
Yes, I'm in support of them, sure.
Okay. And
people have to.
Mr. Severson, do you want to share any thoughts on this one?
I'm just saddened by the not being able to have any fermented malt beverages. Otherwise, I approve of the document.
Okay. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get a motion out here and take a vote on recommending a resolution to the county board amending Rule 16B, making this change from $20 to $25 a day.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
before you ask for a vote on that, the one with regard to the Board of Supervisors, has that already been through rules? Because that is a rule.
That's what we're doing right here today. We're recommending a change to Rule 16B.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yeah, and actually in this motion, if we want to make it a little easier and quicker, Mr. Langreich has a two-part motion. One is to recommend the resolution to the county board to change Rule 16, and the other is to refer to Finance and Personnel the idea of making changes to the employee handbook to match changes in Rule 16B. So that'd be the motion. It's a two-part motion that we're looking for.
I'll make the two-part motion.
Okay. Okay. Motion by Seep. I'll go ahead and second the motion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. So thanks, Mr. Langreich, for bringing that forward to us. It'll go to the county board and to the Finance and Personnel Committee now. And then the last significant item for the agenda today is agenda item number 10, video recording of meetings and availability of meeting materials. So I put together a cover sheet on this. This is something that I've heard staff talk about. I've heard some county board members talking about. So it's just an item for discussion. I don't have any recommended rule language change or resolution or anything to go to the county board. I just wanted to get a sense of where the committee was to see if it was worth my time or someone else's time to develop any language for the county board rules regarding video recording of meetings and availability of meeting materials. So this is a two-in-one agenda item. So with the video recording, the research that I did, it was a couple of years back, I contacted the city. They've contracted with Nova Video to record county board meetings along with city council meetings. And then I believe they put that on a public access channel in Richland Center. So our MIS staff have linked to all those videos, and anyone going to the county board website can go to any meeting that's been recorded by Nova Video and go watch that video on YouTube. But that's just our county board meetings. But then in the past year and a half, with WebEx being used at the county now, our MIS staff has been able to video record certain meetings. And I listed the meetings in the cover sheet that are being recorded right now with some consistency. And that's the Administrator Transition Committee, Finance and Personnel, Health and Human Services Board, LEJC, this committee, Rules, and then the Veteran Service Commission. And then we did adopt the COVID-19 plan last year. The most recent version is from September of 2020, and it required 4 different meetings to be recorded according to that COVID-19 plan the county board adopted. So that was the Richland County Board, Finance and Personnel, LEJC, and Rules and Resolutions. So the 2 additional ones, Health and Human Services Board and Veteran Service Commission, they weren't included in that list, but they are being recorded. Then regarding meeting materials, so shifting to that second subject, we have meeting materials for 4 different boards or committees on the county's website. So that's the Administrator Transition Committee, the County Board, Finance and Personnel, and then Rules and Resolutions. And nothing in our rules today states that we have to have meeting materials available to the public on the website. but the only thing regarding meeting materials, that's in rule number 1. And rule number 1 says that resolutions and ordinances for county board meetings should be available to supervisors, so not the public. It doesn't say on the website, it just says digitally. And they are required not later than Wednesday before the next county board meeting. So that's the only place our county board rules address this issue of meeting material. But then we also, of course, have the iPads and their folders for different committees on there. And there are 7 different committees or boards that have their meeting materials on iPads. And that's the Administrator Transition Committee, Child Support, so that's a new one. And then Finance and Personnel, Health and Human Services, LEJC, Property is now putting their meeting materials online digitally. And then this committee, Rules and Resolutions. So what I did then is I also included the attachment that's the list of committees, commissions, or boards, you know, because we probably have about a dozen or 15 that meet somewhat regularly throughout the year. So we have anywhere between 4 and 7 that are doing video recording and meeting material availability, but we have 12 to 15 total committees or boards or commissions that meet regularly. So what are your all's thoughts on this issue?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the definition of meeting materials? Does that include minutes?
No, I wasn't thinking of that when I wrote it. I was thinking of the different documents that are presented to the members of a committee, commission, or board that aren't related to the minutes, because almost every committee, commission, or board has minutes available on the website.
That's good. That's fine. I do think that as far as minutes are concerned, sometimes minutes have attachments, and I do think that you could call those meeting materials or not and put them in another folder. But sometimes a committee requests attachments, or they have mail outs that are sent out to them. And they are submitted with the minutes as attachments. Some do and some don't. So I think that should be covered. But I also think that, you know, all other meeting materials that are an integrated part of the meeting, an integral part of the meeting, whether they're supporting documents or informational documents, whatever the case may be, any document that is integral to the meeting and is referenced in the minutes and is on the agenda should be available to the public. That's my view.
By that specifically, do you mean that the materials should be on the website? Or are you just saying they should be available when requested by the public?
Well, they should be available. They could access those documents by a link.
Okay, so you're saying the website. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I speak for a moment?
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be great to hear from you.
Okay. One thing that I will tell you, and this just came about this morning, we have the radio tower project going on. Just
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
One time. Sorry, Don?
I couldn't hear you, Barb.
Okay. We have the radio project going on, and this morning I received an open records request for the consultant's review that was presented in an open meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Wendell, but I believe we have to supply that. It's way easier for MIS to be able to say, okay, just go to this website and you can get it there, than to have to respond to each and every open records request because there's an item of interest.
Very good.
Okay, Supervisor Severson, what are your thoughts on this issue of the meeting materials and having them available on the website for all these different committees and boards?
I think it's fine. I just want to see more of it on our iPads in the folders for like committees that I'm not part of, so I can look what they're looking at. The other thing I would like to propose is maybe we offer some more compensation for our MIS department for doing all this extra work. Part of this, and maybe add 2 extra staff and increase their salary.
I agree with you, but you're off the agenda.
Okay, so it sounds like, Mr. Severson, you're saying that you're not so much in favor of getting all these materials on the county's website. You would like to, at a minimum, see them on the county board members' iPads, so that at least county board supervisors have access to the materials of other committees or boards.
Yeah, and I also agree with them being on the website also for the public to go after. But I know that this all takes time and it takes personnel to do all this. And if they're already stretched out thin to where they're already at, I don't want to add more work on to their duties than what they have already stressed out or at their max.
Well, and I did have a conversation with Ms. Scott yesterday, right?
Mhm.
And she did suggest some challenges that her and her staff have experienced regarding meeting materials. More so, kind of on the timeliness of receiving them so they can get them on the website. And what we talked about was we have this tool where staff can develop procedures. The county board approved that. Mr. Langrek helped us through that. MIS can basically work, I believe, with Mr. Langrek and come up with some procedures and then disseminate those procedures to everyone at the county to say, if you want meeting materials up, here's the procedure you need to follow. So to me, it kind of sounded, I kind of asked that same question of her yesterday, like, are you staffed appropriately to be able to do this? And she said a bigger problem is people, people kind of following some rules that make it easier for them, so they're not scrambling at the last minute, or so she doesn't have to bring her staff on after hours, to post meeting materials or to even hold a meeting sometimes remotely. That's been a challenge, like last minute, we have a meeting at 7 p.m., Tuesday evening, we need you to do this, and she finds out 4 hours beforehand. That's what's creating some challenges for MIS. Did I summarize all that right? Okay, she's nodding her head. So me personally, I would like to see more meeting materials on the website, because I'm like you, Mr. Severson, I like to see what other committees are up to, especially when something gets a little controversial, or you have a constituent who contacts you and they have a question. It's really hard to dig back into meeting materials when they don't exist to try to learn more about an issue. So I guess part of my question here is, do you guys think we need a county board rule developed where this is required, or do you think it's just something we should encourage through discussing this, getting more and more committees and boards to, would you rather go the encouragement route or the county board rule route?
Encouragement.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
C? Yep.
Some time ago, there was a memo sent out to all the department heads and committees. And I believe it was an administrative document. It may have come from the administrator, indicating and listing those people henceforth who would be recording their meetings and that they would be posted and accessible on the website. And that was done administratively. somebody has got to enforce these rules, and the administrator, we hired him to do that. So I'm in favor of any document that's written in conjunction with a meeting is a public record, and the public can have access to it either by request for records through a procedure, or by going to the website and looking it up on their own. And it seems to me to save the county a hell of a lot of work if it was accessible to the public on the website. It's public business.
Okay, so I'm hearing from Mr. Severson, he wants to go the encouragement route. I'm not quite sure I understand which route you would like to go, Mr. C, as far as making it a county board rule or the encouragement route. Maybe you're saying the administrator?
Well, do you have to have a county board rule? Maybe so. However, whatever rule is required to get the job done, then we'll follow that procedure. If we have to go to the county board to have a rule passed, approved, fine. If we have to go to rules committee first, fine. But I think that the goal here is: do we want to get it? Do we want to do this? I think we do, and I think we want to recommend this to the county board because it is in the public interest. The public records are going to save people a lot of time. If somebody puts in a request for the minutes from such and such a meeting and such a meeting and the documents attending, and they're right there for them and they can self-serve. Do you follow me?
Yep, I do follow you. I don't mind having a county board rule myself where meeting materials are required to be electronically made available to the public via the website. But I wonder, Mr. Langreich, do you have any opinions you'd like to share with us on the administrative side?
It's going to require some check and balance to follow up then and make sure that things are on there. If there's quality assurance that, like all policies, as soon as we put them out there, they're good and they're appropriate, but then we have to enforce them as we had talked about.
And if I may.
Yeah, yep.
I've had a couple of department heads come to me and say, can you show me where this is written? And it's not that they're challenging, they're looking for written direction. So I think that the clearer that the committee can make this and the board can make this, it's more supportive for department heads.
Yeah, and we don't have anything written currently, right? Yeah, so I think that's why I wanted to bring this forward. Because I have heard from Ms. Scott and from some others about this. So,
well, and there should be authority underlining the action. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, and then maybe I'll kind of shift topic to the issue of video recording. For me, it's been educational to listen to some other committees that I've never gone to or boards. So I've watched, say, well, I'm doing dishes or whatever it is. I've watched Health and Human Services board meeting, one or a couple of those, LEJC and Veterans Service Commission. I've never been to any of those in person, but it is educational. I was able to learn a lot by listening to those. I don't think it would be, I guess my opinion on video recording is I don't think it would really be feasible to video record every committee, commission, or board meeting at the county. I think there's just too many of them. I do think that would be a big issue for staff because every time we do this, we have MIS staff and their presence and they're helping helping with the WebEx application, and then they're going afterward and figuring out how to get it posted. But I do believe that at a minimum, we should have some committees and commissions and boards video recorded. I guess I tend to think that the four biggest departments, so that'd be the Sheriff's Department, Health and Human Services, Pine Valley, and Highway. I would prefer to be able to watch those and see some of those and let the public see those. So what do you guys think about the issue of video recording?
I think it's fine. Why can't we include audit committee on there?
Well, Mr. Chairman, some committees have a lot of constituents or stakeholders. For example, in the Veterans Committee, you have about 1,300 veterans in the county, and they're intensely interested in veteran services, veterans benefits, and so forth. And they're interested in the workings of the committee as well. So it depends, I suppose, and how much public interest there is by either a subset, a constituency subset, whatever the case may be. I think there's persuasive argument for having some committees and boards and commissions recorded on a regular basis as a matter of rule.
Okay, so I'm hearing some support. I'm hearing also that the list might be a little bit more expansive than I was thinking. So I think it's going to take a little work to figure out, if we do create a rule about video recording, which committees, commissions, and boards should be included. I would think that we need to hear administratively and from MIS, what is their limit? What's possible with current staff? What would be the budget impact of going beyond a certain number? How would they handle that? I know that whatever decision we would make would then affect staffing and budget on this one, I'm assuming. Is that fair to say, Mr. Langreich and Ms. Scott?
It is. There are some other things that we could think outside of the box on. And when you look at, there are options that we could purchase to make it so MIS to not to be present, and you can set up rooms to record, for meetings. Obviously, like Highway and Pine Valley don't meet in the county boardroom. So those are going to be unique, but we could set the county boardroom up so that all those meetings, the person in charge of that meeting would just hit a button and it would go. That costs money initially up front, but then it saves staff time in the end. So that is an option that we can start to look at if this is the direction the committee chooses to go.
Okay, so there could be that's good to hear, that there's some potential cost saving. I'm sure there'd need to be a little training that would happen of department staff. But
yes, I think there'd be saving on our MIS budget and ensuring that we didn't have to have MIS tech there. But I think, though, there would be some displaced cost on the department level where outside of having somebody kind of to manage the meeting, take minutes, we would need another person. Wouldn't have to be MIS staff, but somebody from a department or one of the committee members themselves, somebody to be able to then manage the meeting, to control flow in and out of the meeting. If it's closed session, if there's somebody that's coming in to harass the meeting, that type of function as well would also take some type of manning, some way, shape, or form. But overall, yes, I think if the expectations are to have more of an interface platform and to be able to allow not only the public to engage, but supervisors, staffs, presenter to be able to engage in our partially in-person and partially remote types of formats that we're getting accustomed to, I think it's all good and it expands transparency and participation, but we're going to have to, as we're talking about here, we're going to have to assess what that cost is and decide if that's a priority in funding that expense to meet those expectations.
And I assume there is also a difference between recording meetings and making remote access available for meetings, that there are situations where you have remote access, like today we're remote only. It's very easy to record. but then you might have a meeting taking place in the county boardroom. Is it possible to record a meeting without having the WebEx platform, or do we have to have the WebEx platform to record a meeting in the county boardroom?
We could set up those capabilities. Typically we don't, but we certainly could.
But right now we're recording through WebEx. We're not,
Correct.
we really
Everything
need
that
that
we're doing right
application
now.
to, okay,
Right.
okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
In other words, you could video record a meeting and without using WebEx, but you could post it in such a way that you could have a link to it to the public at any time thereafter, and you wouldn't. Would that be more cost effective? And yet you'd still be providing public accountability, public access.
So Ms. Scott was shaking her head. She was shaking her head no. Is that right?
Okay, well,
there would be no
It's
cost
not that I'm
savings?
shaking my head. No, it's just that you're not going to be broadcasting in real time when you're doing that unless you're doing it via a platform.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that that would be as valuable to our constituents, in my opinion.
Well,
What?
I lean very heavily on Ms. Scott's expertise.
Well, good. And I'm wondering if there's more cost to not using the WebEx platform. That was one of my, and you're nodding your head. Okay. So it sounds like WebEx is kind of a cost saving measure when it comes to video recording. Is kind of what I'm hearing. Okay. So I think what I'm hearing from the three of us who are here today is that there is a desire to have some language developed which amends the county board rules for the future, but that we need to think about what some of the implications are budgetary wise and procedurally how we would do this. So we need to be working in tandem with our administrative staff and with our MIS staff to make sure that this rolls out in a well thought out, planned way. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yes, that's fine, Mr. Chairman. And if you're making that motion, I will second it. And I'd like to have discussion.
Sure.
Brief discussion.
I'll make a motion that we develop county board rules for consideration at a future meeting in tandem with administrative and IT staff.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by myself and a second by Severson. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Seep.
I wanted to, almost lost my thought here. Oh, it's understood, I assume, that the practice that the current practice should continue the way it is until something more formal is approved by the board. For example, you have several committees and boards right now who are having WebEx meetings. So I assume that everyone should just continue doing what they're doing for the present.
I think that's a safe assumption. I think even just having the discussion might encourage other committees and boards to start considering this and doing something. It's not really clear to me right now who has the authority to request that a meeting be video recorded or that meeting materials be put out there. So it's a little loose, I think, at the moment, but I think it's already kind of happening organically, and I think that's good. I think we just need to kind of set some parameters around it. Would be some of my thinking, so that it's, is it the chair of a committee? Is it a department head? Is it the whole committee? It's really unclear right now how it's happening today, but yeah, I don't think we want to discourage it from happening either. And I think it is going to continue on no matter that we had this discussion, to answer your
Mr.
question
Chairman?
directly. Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
a long time ago, going back to the ad hoc committee, one of the notions that was strongly considered and accepted and expressed by all was that we were hiring an administrator because we needed one boss. That we can't have 17 different bosses. We need one boss and one person to enforce the rules. And so I would say that when it comes to whose responsibility is it to see that this is done, if it's approved by the board, well, it's the authority rests, I believe, with the administrator. That's why we hired him. He's an enforcer, among other things.
Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and take a vote on this then. There's nothing else. So all those in favor, oh, yep, go ahead.
Well, there was deafening silence to my comment, but okay, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. So we will work on developing some of that language for us to consider in the future. So that takes us down to agenda item number 11, future agenda items. Mr. Severson, do you have any future agenda items?
Not right now.
Okay, Mr. Seep, do you have any?
Not at present.
Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 12, adjournment. This is a record. We went over 2 hours today. I've never been at a rules meeting that went this long.
With 3 people.
With 3 people, no less. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Thursday, August 5th at 10 a.m. in the county boardroom and with WebEx meeting options available.
What about the chickens?
They will not be there because I will be in person. Hopefully there's no conflict. Okay, so you guys okay with that meeting date and time? Does that work for you?
Yes, leave the Trojan horse at home next time.
Okay. Okay, so I need a motion.
Curious,
So
Severson
moved.
will move the code.
Okay, we got
Second.
a motion by Severson and a second by Seep. I think we're good. So I'm good with that one too. So we are adjourned to Thursday, August 5th. So we'll see folks then. And thank you for staff for spending so much time with us today. I hope it was really enjoyable for you.
It's
Thank you, Mr.
enjoyable
Chair.
for me.
Be safe.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye, thank you.